Well, welcome to another Cutting Edge show. I'm Omar Neal, one of your hosts of this great, innovative, creative, safe space to have conversation that are important to you and your family. This is the Cutting Edge, where we discuss all things health and wellness, COVID-19, and beyond. This program is brought to you in part by the University of Maryland School of Public Health. And we are excited to be here to talk about lupus, helping your loved ones navigate the complications of lupus. Is the conversation for this evening. We could not be more pleased to have a extraordinary panelist to help us unpack this most significant health issue that many people are living with throughout the country. We have Wendy Rogers, who is the Director of Care and Support Services at the Lupus Foundation of America. And we have Dr. Candace Philman, who is Assistant Professor of Medicine at the Brigham and Women's Hospital at Harvard Medical School. And so to have these powerhouses with us today is I'm elated beyond measure. Well, I don't do this by myself. We have been doing this for many years now, but it's my sidekick, my brother from another mother. It is none other than Dr. Stephen B. Thomas. We call him Dr. T amongst these parts. He is a professor of the University of Maryland School of Public Health and director of Maryland Center for Health Equity. And of course, he is the person who helps to drive this conversation. Please join me in welcoming my friend, my brother from another mother, Dr. Stephen B. Thomas. Hey, Dr. T, how you doing, man?
Hey, Mayor, it is always good to be in spaces with you. But I want you to know I'm coming in from the field, from the front lines, on the back of, because the pandemic's still going on,
Oh, absolutely, man.
And there's an outright assault on information that can save lives. So we got to do something you've been saying from the very beginning. Put the information where the cows can get it. Break it down so people understand. And that inspired me and made me think about what's coming up when people take charge of their lives.
Right.
And it took me back to South Africa. When they were voting for the first time, they had to go and teach people how to vote. And look how they did it.
Mm-hmm.
Very simple. And we're about to do that too with the barbershop storybook.
Right.
So the time will come when the conversation we're going to have today will find its way in formats that people can really use to make a difference and demystify a lot of the science that we have out here.
We talked about how art is also a vehicle for information dissemination, and it is done through music and many other places, but in books and in graphic artists doing their thing in depicting different concepts. It's just amazing the way it does, and it also engages the audience. It gets them to follow a storyline and to also draw conclusions based on what they think is going on there. So it that intellectual curiosity is also stimulated through that process.
Let me just say this, man. Let me just say this, because you sent me a photo walking across the Pettus Bridge recently, when President Biden was there, and in the civil rights movement, they had songs.
Oh, absolutely.
We're in a battle right now where we need some songs to inspire us to move forward. So I totally agree with you that we need to use the arts more effectively in this effort to deal not only with COVID, but COVID and beyond.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. We don't do this by ourselves, Dr. T. You see us up front, but we have a team behind the scene that's headed up by Meg Jordan, our technical director. She also does our Public Health Minute. She's assisted by Maggie Daly, as assistant technical director. Saraya Khan, who is the social media coordinator, and of course, Elijah Pugh Jr., sound designer. So, we have people who make it possible for us to come and to do what we do, which is to engage people in authentic conversations about issues that matter. And
I,
so
I see you still bouncing to the Elijah Pugh beat too.
ain't no doubt about it, man. It's contagious. It happens all the time. Don't forget you can catch us on all of the social media platforms. You can catch us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share with your friends and your network because you can always find something very informative and not only education, but you can be entertained. So this is infotainment. We inform you and entertain you at the same time.
Here we
You know,
go.
there we go. And don't forget about our newsletter. Each and every week, we put a newsletter out. Even if we're not on the air, you can always find us in your mailbox for your where you get your emails with our newsletter. If you subscribe, you're going to get it each and every week. It chronicles our show. It gives vignettes of previous guests. It has articles associated with health issues primarily. It's just a really good publication. It's put together by our master team member, Maggie Daly. And so we are so proud of the work that Maggie does with that newsletter. It is just an extraordinary thing. I read it as well, and I'm a part of the show, but I'm always just really inspired by the way that she weave these different concepts into that newsletter. So you will really enjoy it. So make sure that you like and subscribe to the newsletter. You can use the QR code, and that takes you right there to it. All right, Dr. T, you ready to rock and roll, man? Let me tell you something, man. This whole thing of lupus, man, I have been just really fascinated that since the last few weeks that we've been talking about doing this show, I just kind of in my own space and environment, I've just inquired about it and found that many of the people that I know and people that I know who know people that are close to them
Right.
are living with lupus. And so this is a huge thing. It's something that we need to talk about. This is the first show we've done on lupus.
That's right.
But it's certainly not the last. And so to bring on this kind of expert panelists, people who are boots on the ground,
There you go.
dealing with lupus, I mean, I'm really fascinated about it.
And Mayor, the same thing where I am, even talking to the barbers and stylists, they're noticing as well. And men, which is somewhat rare, but men coming forward, acknowledging they suffer with lupus. So this is going to be an amazing show.
Right. It's huge. It's just a great thing. And you know what, Dr. T, I'm so happy that there are people out there who care and who are really focusing on not only what it is, but ways we can cure lupus. I mean, and that's because it is important that we think about what can we do to mitigate whatever discomfort and suffering that people have with lupus. So
and Mayor,
that's our work. Yeah.
there's one more thing. Our audience is broad. And so some people out there may be caregivers,
Right.
or their loved ones. And this can help them better understand what the disease is and how to help their loved one work through it. So it affects the whole family.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely right. This is not just the person living with lupus. If you are connected to that person, all of us are living with
That's right.
lupus, right? And so that's how we need to say it. Once you know, then you owe, Dr.
Here we
T.
go. Buckle your seatbelt.
Buckle your seatbelts. Let's rock and roll. Let's bring up our guests, all right? First, Wendy Rogers. She is the Director of Care and support services at the Lupus Foundation of America. Wendy resides in Southern California. Southern girl.
There we go.
Currently works with the Lupus Foundation of America. And we just finished talking with Wendy, and her passion towards her work is palpable. You can feel it. And she has a unique perspective because she's actually working with the foundation. So she knows the ins and outs and the nuances of all that's happening in all of the areas, political and otherwise. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our first panelist for this show, Wendy Rogers. Hey, Wendy, how you doing?
Hey,
Hey, I'm doing well. Thank you for
Wendy,
having me.
we snap you up. That's how we bring you up on stage.
I like
snap
that.
you up. Yeah. Thank you so much for agreeing to join with us. I'm sure that there are many people out there who are just curious as can be about what lupus is. That many people have heard of it, but don't understand what it is, what it does, how people contract or whatever, get lupus, if you will. Is it something that's already in the body and it's just manifests itself at some point? Well, all of those questions we're going to ask, but I'm thankful of the foundation for the work you are doing, because you all are intentional about dealing with lupus, right?
Yeah.
Stand up for lupus. Come on now.
How
Snap
did you get it? How did you get into this thing? I mean, I'm sure that there's a story.
Yes,
but how
I
did it happen?
definitely have a story. I have lupus. This is my 23rd year living with it. And I've had an amazing journey with it, up and down. I've been through the valleys, the mountains, everywhere with lupus. So that's how I came about to be in this area. And personally, I've learned so many things about it. And just to answer your previous comment, it's not something you can contract. It's not a virus or a bacteria or anything. People with lupus basically have a defective immune system, which is our system used to protect us and fight off germs and things that don't belong. So I like to say we have a glitch in our system, and that glitch causes inflammation. It can't tell the difference between the healthy tissues and cells and the things that don't belong. So it does a beautiful job, working hard to protect us, but it's overactive, and it'll attack the tissues that are healthy and cause inflammation and damage. And anything is gain. It's no pattern to it. So that's kind of, in essence, an overview of what it is. It's the immune system has a problem.
Yes, it doesn't know the friends from the foe, huh?
Right, right.
That could be part of the storybook.
Yep.
It is that kind of explanation that you gave that is so important in the spaces that we're doing the work in the barbershops and salons. And so in your bio, it talked about your journey, but also that you became an advocate. There are a lot of people who are suffering from various diseases, but there's sometimes shame that keeps them from stepping out in public. But you did that. What was your motivation to step out like you have to be an advocate?
Well, I have to say my experience with lupus ended up being very public, because I'm originally from Texas and I had relocated to California, and I was planning to go apply to optometry school. I got married. I had a young daughter, and I was in California just not too long, not even a good year. And I started having these symptoms and ended up in the hospital due to lupus, and spent about 6 months there fighting for my life. So the big question came about, is what happened to Wendy, or what's wrong with her? Because even in the hospital, people were wondering, this person doesn't have cancer. She wasn't in a bad car accident. Why is she here so long? So it was a very public experience for me, because my family and friends were waiting to learn, why was I in the hospital? Because I'd always been a very healthy person. I was an athlete and never had any major illness. So it was like a big question mark, just like our symbol for lupus. So I had to do advocacy because, first of all, coming from a background in biology and wanting to be in the healthcare field, I was absolutely shocked that people didn't even know what this was. And it was such a life-changing experience. I just could not believe it. I just could not believe the level of explanation I had to have, even with the medical team. You know, I watched their struggle trying to understand and figure out treatments with me. So I had sympathy on both sides of the fence because I had a very caring medical team. They were like my family, and they often struggled to figure out what to do next. So this is why I decided to speak up. And then the peripheral things of lupus, which we can talk about later, I lost everything. I had to walk away from a career. I lost my marriage. I lost my ability to work. And those are the things that often go unspoken with lupus that make it uncomfortable for people to have conversations about, you know, what happened to them.
Right.
Wendy.
Right. That's
Wow.
so powerful.
Wow.
It's so
And
powerful.
we have to unpack some of that along with our next guest, because you really gave us a little master class and that we don't fully appreciate. Even back to when you first went into the hospital, you didn't know you had lupus. We're going to go back to that moment when they finally figured it out.
Well, I'll have to tell you, I figured it out.
Wait a minute.
I figured out I had lupus. Yeah. I started having issues, and what happened to me that really made me seek medical care was I overlooked a lot of the symptoms of lupus, like hair loss. I was swelling.
Wait, slow down.
Tired.
Hair loss.
Hair loss.
Was that one of the first things?
It was among the first things. For me, joint pain was the very first symptom I had. I would wake up every morning achy. And as I got going, it was almost like being cold and stiff. And as the day went on, I would be okay. But I was considering the fact that I had moved to California from Texas. And if you know anything about the South, it's hot and humid. And we need our air condition, our fan.
Blamed it on the air conditioning.
Yeah, and I came to California, and surprisingly, it was cool. You know, the weather was cool. The temperature can drop. You can wear a jacket almost year round. And so I felt like I was being, you know, affected by the environment because I was in this cool environment. So I felt like that's why my joints were aching, and I needed to adjust to the climate. And it just continually got worse. I even had a day where it was just like I got this weakness. I couldn't push up, and it would go away. So I just would overlook it because it was just like in the morning time, I would notice the stiffness and like having to warm up. But then one morning I got up to take my daughter to her basketball game, and I couldn't even lift my head from the pillow. And that was the moment I knew something was definitely wrong with me. It was just like I was paralyzed, and it was so frightening. So that's when I went to the doctor.
Okay.
And I got there, and when they did my vitals, my blood pressure was sky high. It was 225 over 125. So I was in stroke range.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I've been walking around like that, not knowing, you know, even that my blood pressure was high. So I was initially treated as a person that was dealing with hypertension, and it was assumed I didn't take care of myself. But
whoa, you got so much packed in there. It was assumed it was you.
Yeah, it was assumed, you know, that I wasn't eating right or taking care of myself because, you know, when you think about the factors of high blood pressure and being an African-American person, you know, it's kind of stereotypical of how people think we eat. But what my medical team didn't know is that I had been an athlete. I played volleyball, ran track, I was a swimmer. You know, and, you know, I have lived a very happy and active lifestyle. Even when I had my daughter, I had a teen pregnancy, and I had her when I was 16, and I had a natural pregnancy. I didn't have any complications or anything. So this was my first time really coming into contact with a medical team on something very serious outside of like strep throat or something basic. I had never been in a hospital other than to have my daughter. So this whole approach to me was new.
Wow.
Mm.
Well, I can't
So
wait to learn more.
yeah, so
I'm so glad
basically
that you're
what
here.
happened,
Go ahead, Wendy.
yeah, basically what happened is I got so frustrated because they started treating me with blood pressure meds. And
Okay.
they went through 3 different types, and I noticed my symptoms kept worsening and nothing controlled the blood pressure. So I was actually frustrated and angry. I said, you know what? I'm going to start trying to figure out what's wrong with me. Something is wrong. And I
Wow.
literally like did research, and I had this book about health issues that commonly affect women. And I still
Mm.
have the book today. It was something somebody had given me and I held on to it.
Mm.
Flipping through there, looking up stuff, and I found this article, very simple, 1 pager, 1 or 2 pages about lupus. And when I was reading, it talked about how it often caused joint pain. And when I backtracked my symptoms, I was like, aha, that was the very first thing I realized that was different in my health. So I
Interesting.
literally asked to be tested.
You asked to be tested for it.
Yeah,
Wow.
Did you get any pushback?
I did.
We'll go into that a little bit later.
Wow. Well, let me tell you this. This
Wow.
is setting the stage,
What are you
Wendy
telling
Rogers.
me?
You got it. That's how you set
Wow.
the stage for a conversation.
Right.
Because these are lived experiences, and it trumps everything else, right? And so we are appreciative for your presence and for your ability to so clearly articulate what is happening. I think it's going to be very, very important for our listeners to understand the symptoms, signs, and symptoms,
Yes.
and all of that concerning lupus. And you're going to help us out with that. Thank you so much. We got somebody else. It can even get more better than
There
this,
you go.
can it?
Mo better.
More better. Yeah. We're going to bring up Dr. Candace Philman. She is assistant professor of medicine at Brigham and Women's Health and at Harvard Medical School. She is one of those kind of individuals who are just down to earth, although she's done so many things, practicing rheumatology, all of that kind of stuff. She does all of this stuff, assistant professor at the Harvard, and all of that. But she down to earth. She
There
real
you go.
people, man.
She hanging out with us.
She hanging
Come
out
on.
with us, and so you can read all the stuff about her. I mean, in fact, if we had put it all up there, we'd be to the next week trying to get it all in. But we couldn't do all of that, so we just gonna let you read as I talk about her because her spirit. One of the things both Candace and Wendy, the spirit of they just have beautiful spirits, and so I'm so appreciative to be able to welcome her to the Cutting Edge Show. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming our next guest, Dr. Candace Philman. Hey, Doc, how you do?
Let's snap her up. Snap her up. Come on now, get her up here.
Hey, what's up?
Thank you.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here, especially after that very tough act to follow that of the intro.
Well, let me tell you that that we all are possessors of some truth, and so it's important that we share our perspective. You have a unique perspective, being a physician and being in the medical space on the other side as well, to understand how this stuff works. And one of the things that Wendy was saying is that people were trying to figure it out, and I'm of the opinion that we're still trying to figure it out, and that we've not yet grasped completely all of the issues associated with lupus. So one is, I want you to tell me who is Candace Philman. I want to know that, right? So I'm gonna give you an opportunity to kind of lay out who you are to me.
Well, I can say, because you will hear the background noise, I'm a mom with 3 kids who you can hear behind me, so I apologize
Wonderful.
for
No,
that.
don't
It's a family
apologize.
show.
This is a
Family
family
show.
show. We love this. I mean, absolutely.
So I have 3 kids. I have a 9-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 3-year-old. So that is who you will hear in the background. And I can tell you a little bit. My background is actually as a political scientist is how I started. And then I became very interested in public health. And by way of sort of political science and public health, I decided that I wanted to be a doctor. And then when I became a doctor, I decided I wanted to do public health too. So, for me, I have always been inspired by the patients I've worked with and the people I've met. And I spent some time living abroad and doing community public health and women's health, and became so inspired by resilience and how people who have struggled with chronic illness and lived experiences that can be so terrible become leaders. And I found that in rheumatology when I was a resident. And I originally planned to be a primary care doctor doing health disparities research. And that's where I started my training. And I slowly started to see patients in my primary care practice who were young, oftentimes female, and oftentimes came from communities that didn't have a lot of money or didn't have, the best access to healthcare. And they came in to see me with things that seemed avoidable. They came in with kidneys that didn't work and, things that I looked at and I said, gosh, that's crazy. If I had been able to see this patient a year and a half ago, they would never have ended up in this place. And I started to talk to people who were more senior to me in rheumatology, and they said, well, yeah, that's definitely true. And, I also started to, the reason I wanted to be a primary care doctor is because I loved this idea of having these long relationships with patients over years and meeting them when they were young and then seeing them grow. And the rheumatologist said to me, well, your primary care doctor sees your patient once a year and I see my patients every 2 months. And I was like, aha. So I was drawn to it by the patients I met when I was a resident working nights at the hospital and, took care of patients who were 20 years old who came in with these things that I said, there's no way this should have happened. And I decided I wanted to do research to see what I could do to fix that. And I wanted to be a doctor taking care of those patients. So that's what I've been doing since.
Well, that's one heck of a story. Yeah, go ahead, Dr. T.
I'm just listening and realizing that, where was the doctor like you when Wendy needed one? So what I'm saying is you came through that system with the spirit you're bringing in this room right now of caring. You were attracted to do your work with some of the most difficult and then pick rheumatology. So what was your motivation to get through the training and the socialization that happens in our profession that allowed you to keep this commitment, this dream?
I would say two things. I think one are the mentors that I've had.
Okay.
There's a physician who is the reason I became a rheumatologist, and there are many sort of isms that we now, after generations, he has since retired, but use of his. And one of the things that he told me is that the way that he learned to be the doctor he was the years he spent driving taxis, because that's how he learned to listen to people's stories.
Wow.
And by listening to people's stories, he became the doctor he was. And I rotated with him when I was a first-year resident, and he said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to be a primary care doctor and understand health disparities. And he said, well, you're going to be a rheumatologist, and I'll tell you why. He's like, because nobody's doing this and we need people to do this. And, and if you like stories, you're going to enjoy, meeting all the patients I take care of and hearing their stories. So what he started to do was to funnel his patients that he cared for in rheumatology to me as in primary care. So I started to share his patients and his patient stories with him. And I learned both how to be a doctor and why I wanted to be a rheumatologist. And I was always struck the time I spent with him that, the patient would walk into the room and he would say, well, did your son win that baseball game? And he would know the son's name, the son's age, the name of the team that the son played on, the dog's name, the
And he's a
neighbor's name,
specialist.
everything. And he knew everything. And that to me was what inspired me to say, well, this is a field that would allow me to do that. And there are people in this field who do this. So so he was really a really big influential person for me. And I think the other were my patients. And I really very early on as a first year resident, because of the patients he sent to me, I developed these wonderful relationships. And I think from an intellectual standpoint, there's something exciting about rheumatology, because it is oftentimes conditions that are like puzzles that you're just like what Wendy was saying, people come in not with, just a sore, not just a sore throat, but like a sore throat that you can culture and say, this is what you have.
Right.
They come in with a story that has evolved over years with symptoms that don't always follow the textbook. And one of the sort of art of our fields is that there isn't a perfect blood test for lupus or our other diseases. So there's an art to it. And from an intellectual standpoint, that was very appealing to me. And so I was able to have that. And also this idea of, having patients that I could follow for their whole lives and, and be a part of their story. And then from a research standpoint, there were all these unanswered questions about why some people had worse disease than others, and why people get lupus, and why do medications work in some people and not others, and why are there difficulties with people getting equal access to rheumatology care that no one had done. And so for me, it was kind of the trifecta of the things that I wanted to do with my life. So that's how I ended up here.
I see your excitement, and we can all hear the power of a mentor. You can change people's lives in a positive way. I always want my students to know the difference between a mentor and a tormentor. And you surely had a good one, and you will be a good one. And if you want to give him a shout out, you can, because that was just a blessing. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah. There's an adage that says people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah.
Right. And Dr. Feldman, I see why they say that, because you do care. Thank you so much. Man, this has been great. This has been wonderful. We have let me see if our resident physician is hanging out with us, Dr. Ritter. If you can go on camera, we'll be ready to pull her up.
Get that
she
pulse
gets
beat.
ready and get that. And then Dr. Ritter, let's pull Dr. Ritter up. Dr. Ritter is our resident physician. She's a gynecologist, OBGYN, and she's you see when you working with babies, and then she's working with babies now.
Look at this one.
She's a grandmother.
She's grandmother. So you see, Dr. Feldman, you see
9-week-old
how this
Dora.
works. You see how we do this thing. This is real stuff. Hey,
She just
Dr.
got her
Ritter.
bottle, so she should be good.
Yeah, Dr. Ritter, I mean, this whole notion of lupus, man, this is huge. And a lot of people are living with lupus, and a lot of families are puzzled, just like with Wendy. They're puzzled about what is actually happening. We know that something is happening. We don't know what is happening. And because of the lack of knowledge, then people don't know how to be supportive. Right. So what's your take on the conversation so far?
Right. The stories are, so important. The stories are long. The stories do not fit into a 15-minute doctor visit. And that's what you get. Or if you get that, right? So it is the time that we need to spend with the unknown that doctors are afraid of. Because first of all, you hear the story, and then what do you do about it? Well, if you don't have an answer, we're always told we should do something, give a prescription, or, have a surgery or something. The unknown is very, very scary in the medical world. So rheumatologists, have kind of always been a mystery to me as to what they do. It wasn't really a field of medicine when I was starting out, but I can see why it would be interesting to you, Dr. Feldman, because you're curious. So it takes a curious person like Wendy to figure out, her own illness. So it is a collaboration between the patient and the doctor. And that's what we're missing in the 15-minute appointment. So the stories matter. And you guys had great stories tonight. I really appreciated listening to them. I'm a women's health doctor. I'm an OBGYN. So I love listening to the stories too. And I do take them from cradle to grave.
Absolutely. And that's something.
which is a blessing. It's a blessing because we learn more from our patients than we learn from medical textbooks.
Great. Well,
I like the connection to Wendy's curiosity to come up with the reason her own diagnosis, and then your curiosity. It truly is a collaboration. And in these spaces, Dr. Feldman and Wendy, we want to spread that kind of agency to more and more people. And you're going to meet some of them over the course of our time together.
In a few seconds. In fact, I want to do this. That is a pretty baby. I just have to, that
Okay,
like a doll.
okay.
I mean,
There we
just
go.
beautiful, right? We love you so much, Dr. Carol Ritter. And
Thank you.
you can come on and off when you get ready. I may pull you back up, but you be ever ready. You know how to do that when we're here, right? Love you so much. Let's bring up Sandra Jenkins. Sandra is one of our, she's a wellness warrior, but not only that, she's a hairstylist, and she hangs out in the Philadelphia area. She's originally from Philadelphia, but just a beautiful person, both inside and out. And she has been a part of what we've been doing for a long, long time. I don't even know when you started. It's been so long now, but you're an integral part of what it is we do. Hey, Sandra, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Mayor Neal.
Let's snap Sandra up.
Let's
Everybody
snap
get
her up.
snapped
Look,
up.
it's
Come on
looking so
now.
beautiful. I love the colors and all of that. Tell us about what you're thinking about this, and it's important. I want you to know that I have I've truly meditated on the importance of this particular show more than before, because I didn't know much about lupus.
Right. Yep.
And I confess my ignorance to that. But my curiosity now has heightened, particularly because now I know people who have lupus that I didn't even know had lupus. And so now I want to be a conduit for information dissemination throughout the country and around the world for lupus. I am an advocate now for lupus, and you can count me as one of them.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Your thoughts, Chandra?
Yeah. Well, my thoughts tonight is that this is a long time dream that I've ever had, to actually be on a platform to talk about this chronic disease. It is quite a scary experience, as I can relate to Wendy. All of the symptoms that Wendy explained is very true, and I relate to that wholeheartedly. However, I consider myself a fighter. I consider myself a warrior. I consider myself living with lupus. More and more and more, I realize that, the being of having the perseverance and the adaptability of living day to day with the disease is quite one own's experience. And to be able to share this knowledge tonight with those as our rheumatologists, I commend you for even having the interest and understanding what it is to be that person to listen, because it takes that great primary care doctor to really hear you out. And that was my experience. I could go on and on, but
No, you can go on and on. In
Well,
fact,
thank
I'm giving
you.
you that space. Go
Yeah.
ahead,
thank you.
because
Thank you.
my spirit says you need that space. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Neal. I would like to share with everyone that I believe, and as my rheumatologist believes, that my rheumatologist was my lupus is a result of an issue or a situation that occurred to me when I was 2 years old and when I was severely burned. So therefore, my immune system, was really compromised at the time at a very young age. And from there, I continued to have the symptoms throughout my life that were just really crazy. But I continued to fight through all of that. And it was something that I really felt that I needed to take control of my own life as a result at the time of not having the access to quality healthcare. I felt as though I needed to really learn how to live a healthier lifestyle. So that's when I became more so of a person who you may call a health fanatic or something of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
So that really helped me to really understand the importance of dietary understanding to be able to incorporate in some of the chronic symptoms that I was facing. However, with lupus, it's not going to let you in. It's not going to allow you to say, okay, listen, you're going to beat me, okay, out of this. This is something where lupus will then come and creep into your life, and you really have to go up against it, with full force. And what that turned out to be was something that was very daunting in my life. However, the chronic illness, really did affect my lifestyle. I worked in an aviation industry for many, many years. And, we were faced with various atmosphere situations. We dealt with pressurizations on the airplane, and we had issues that were different temperatures and different locations and environment. And therefore, that really played with my immune system. Crazy. And it wasn't until the day that there was a day that I was on the plane and we were on the tarp without being at the holding gate, and passengers were deplaning that day. And we opened up the cargo door to allow the passengers to deplane. And therefore, the sun came beaming into my eyes. And that's when I had an attack. That's when I was rushed to the emergency ward. That's when I was diagnosed. And it was told to me by the doctor, if you do not get this checked out, you can lose your vision. And that's when I was referred to a rheumatologist and was diagnosed with systemic lupus from there.
Yeah.
So from there, it was quite a daunting experience, as I can say. However, I will not allow lupus to take over my life. And I do understand the importance to become that advocate for, people in my life, not just, me advocating behind my chair, but me advocating all the time about this chronic disease. It is something that I can clearly say that it mimics symptoms of a lot of things. It's that, to me, that it's that monster that's out there that you just can't let it overcome your life. So, I would clearly say that it's a sense of, understanding how to communicate, with your friends, your family, and to have, those in your life that you truly love, to know that you're going to be there for them. And don't count this out as something that is going to take me down. This actually going to build me up and make me a better person.
Miss Sandra, so much of it one could keep to themselves.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, flash of light, and everybody else knows something's happening. When did someone else notice something was going on that you knew now that whatever you were going through, someone else was seeing, or that some family? What did they notice, if anything?
My mother.
That goes for Wendy or both of you.
Yes, it was my mother and my husband that noticed. My mother at first, because like I said, she's my pride and joy. She's that one that keeps me strong. She noticed it. She would clearly say, "You were that child of mine that, always had the thinner hair amongst your sisters. You were that child that was always a fighter. You was that child, that, overcame all adversities. You're that fighter. But Sandra, there were strange things about you, that there were dietary issues that you had. You didn't like hot dogs. You didn't like butter. You didn't like the normal things that children liked. You always liked something that was just odd. She knew that there was maybe something internal. There was something systemic, something that was going on with my digestive system that was very different from my sisters. So my mother noticed it, and she watches me till this very day. And with my husband, he always shared with me that, Sandra, listen, you and your joint pain, you can't continue to hide this. You really need to change your occupation. You need to do something different. Those were the things that really agitated me. I didn't like anyone demoting my ability. So therefore, so that's another story.
That's wrong answer, huh?
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. So my joint pain, became my challenge, that I said, and I'm not going to allow this to affect me. So whatever I can do that is related to ways that you can rehabilitate yourself through holistic approaches, I will do.
Sandra, just for a moment,
Uh-huh.
I feel like I have joint pain, but you're talking a different kind of joint pain.
Yeah.
What did it actually feel like?
My very first joint pains, when I was first diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, it started in my lower back. And when I noticed that my doctor, the expression on his face was odd. He looked at me and I felt like he wanted to tell me more, but he didn't. Okay. It was a pain that I felt that, and this was during a time, Dr. T, when I was a flight attendant and I had to walk those airports, and I had to go from, one end of the airport to the next. All right. And we couldn't walk in regular comforting shoes. We had heels that we didn't walk in. I would take a break and go into the restroom. You can't do that today, but I'd take a break and lay on the floor to really get that pain, back running, and probably take maybe, NSAIDs, which are just regular aspirin, or Excedrin, or those types of medication. But that can really do a job on your abdominals, and the side effects were really bad.
Okay.
But the pain was to the point where it felt like I wanted to cut off my leg. I wanted to remove it. I felt I got to a point where I said, listen, if something is there, take it off. It was just that painful.
Wow.
Okay.
Let me do this. A couple of things I want to do. I'm going to go back to Wendy, because I want to, and then I'll go to you, Dr. Philman. Then Katrina, I'm teeing you up now, so be ready.
Let's get a pulse beat at some point.
Yeah, we'll do that. I'm just flowing at this.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. Wendy, what I want to know is people talk about, the disease and how it affects you. I want to know how it affected people around you, right?
Oh my goodness.
Sandra mentioned it in terms of her mother and her husband and that, but I want to bring in the family. I want to bring in the support system. I want to bring in people around you, and then how do you navigate those spaces?
First of all, I have to say, when I think about my support system, I am so blessed, because remember I mentioned I relocated from Texas to California. My father, he's deceased now, but he was working for NASA, sending people to the moon. And my mother was a principal, and she had her own health issues and medically retired. When I got sick, I was in in ICU pretty much for 6 months fighting for my life. And I had a young daughter. The husband that I had worked at night, so there wasn't anyone to be at the hospital. My mother relocated and sat in the hospital every single day for that 6 months and came to be the caregiver. So it was a huge shift in my family. And my father was like, you need to go, just go, you know? And so it restructured my whole family. I mentioned my marriage fell apart. So my mother actually moved to California because when I left the hospital, I was like an invalid. I had to learn to walk again. I had therapy. I had to do dialysis. So it was it's a disease that's very heavy on the family. And in a way, I think because my lupus was so life-threatening and aggressive, it made it kind of simple for people to understand. But for people who might not have an experience like mine, it's extremely frustrating to live with because no two people are really alike. Sandra and I both live with lupus, but our stories are different.
Yes.
We both have pain, but we might experience it differently, you know, and that's the hard part about lupus. You can't necessarily compare, but you have to take it very seriously because lupus can go from something very simplistic to something that can take you out like that. And I've seen it, you know, not to be scary or anything, but it's something you have to really take seriously, especially if you're a minority person. Lupus affects us just very aggressively. So it took a whole village to help me. And it really took even having some hard conversations. I was 27 when I was in the hospital and I had to give my funeral arrangements because I was on and off death watch. That's how serious it was. So, you know, just the conversations we had to do with the family and plan. I had to tell what I was going to do with my daughter. You know, if I didn't make it, I had to try to still be a mom. And that's what motivated me to just fight. And Sandra made a comment about being a fighter. And people with lupus are commonly called lupus warriors because my mom made an observation. She said, I've been looking around all these years to find a lazy person with lupus. It's certain criteria to live with lupus. You cannot be a wimp and have this because every day you wake up with some level of pain. And every day there's some kind of challenge you're often left by yourself to figure out. You know, for example, you might not be able to get out of bed, but you have to go use the restroom. You know, you got to figure that, how am I going to do that? So you might figure out some little quirky way. You might roll and then go to the desk or whatever, you figure it out. And that's what it's like. Kind of like Ninja Warrior. You have this challenge to get to something and you have to figure it out. And often it's left on you.
Right.
So, you know, that's what it's really like. And having a strong support system is something that's very, very important. But many people do not have that because you don't look sick. You can't look at Sandra and me and say, hey, they have something that threatens their life. You know, and I've been in remission with lupus for 14 years, but I'm going to tell you, I got food poisoning a couple of years ago and I was laid out the whole day. I couldn't even get out of the bed and laying there, I was in so much pain. And I thought, as good as you think you feel and as well and as great as you think you have lupus managed, it's always like that thing, like the monster in the back of you that whispers to you, but I'm still here. You're doing good, but remember, I'm still here. And so that's what it's like to live with it because you always have to be cognizant that you can't always do things like everyone else, things that are simple, you know, getting food poisoning and all of that. I could feel the pain coming back.
Wow.
I could feel what it feels like to have a serious flare up, you know, and I knew like, okay, you got to try to just shut it down and do your best to keep this beast quiet. And that's what it's like. So having someone that you can say, you know, today is not the day for me, and they get it.
Yes.
Having to explain yourself is exhausting. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges with living with lupus because You don't have a set pattern. One day you can be up, the next you can be down. Having a simple thing happen like that flash of light, or getting sick, or having some type of exposure can be, you know, tragic to you, and it doesn't make sense to the people around you. So it's really important to educate your community. And sometimes one of the big things I teach people is sometimes the people you think that should be in your circle because who they are to you or in relationship,
Yes.
everybody's not made the same way. So if your mom can't do it, you can't harp on that. You know, maybe it's your friend who gets it and knows how to help you. You just need to have the people in your circle that when you're suffering, they can work with you and have the plan and work with the plan. And so it takes people to really figure out who can be there, who can step up, who can be the voice when it wasn't. And thank God I had the moms. They thought she was a nurse and an attorney and all kinds of things. And she was the voice. And I know I'm here because of her. She's the one that went into the hospital, had all the doctors working together. I mean, changing the whole system. Now I'm in a comprehensive system. And I thought, wow, it wasn't like that when I was there. But I had a parent that did that, you know. When she was by myself and my dad flew in, it was both of them. You know, he was in the medical library taking notes. I still have some notes he wrote on a little piece of Newsweek, a Newsweek magazine to try to understand this blood disorder I had. So, you know, the people that are in your support network, it's not just enough for them to be there. They have to be knowledgeable. They have to be knowledgeable.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm going to tee you up, Katrina, but I want to ask Dr. Philman if you could kind of share with me, although, you know, Sandra and Wendy are talking about they had different symptoms, etc., different experiences, some similar, some different. Are there different kinds of lupus, or is it just lupus is the umbrella and it just impact people differently or affect people differently?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think, you know, the way Wendy said it is right. No two people with lupus look the same, and no two lupus sort of constellations of symptoms are exactly like another person's constellation of lupus. You know, I think in 10 years, we're probably going to call lupus 10 different things. You know, I think that what we now call lupus is probably an amalgamation of a lot of different sort of subtypes or different kinds of disease. You know, I think one of the challenges, and I think that one of the things that also delays diagnosis for a lot of people is that, right? That there isn't sort of a perfectly classic set of symptoms that every person with lupus presents with, or an exact constellation of labs that every person with lupus has. So I think that, you know, on average, it takes 6 years to correctly diagnose somebody with lupus, which is way too long, right? And different people access healthcare in different ways, and different people are fortunate to be able to access healthcare in different ways. And that, I think, is a failing of our healthcare system more than anything, right? Because everybody should be able to access healthcare and high quality healthcare as soon as they have these symptoms, because we know the timing of diagnosis makes a huge difference. But, you know, to get to your question more precisely, Marianela, you know, the way that I think about lupus is there's one kind of lupus that really just affects the skin. And I don't want to say just to minimize, because it can actually be extremely severe and disfiguring as well. And it can cause significant hair loss, significant hyper and hypopigmentation. So making parts of your skin dark or parts of your skin light, rashes, photosensitivity. So being unable to, you know, having rashes that appear in areas that are sun exposed. So there are people who have skin lupus who don't have lupus that affects other organs in their body, that it just affects the skin. But again, when I say just, I mean limited, but it can be very severe as well. And then there's lupus that affects organs of the body, and lupus can affect really any organ of the body. You know, we heard, you know, Wendy talk about kidneys, and we heard Sandra talk about eyes. You know, it really, you know, the eyes, the kidneys, the heart, the GI tract, really the blood, you know, these are all parts of the body that can be affected by it. So, you know, and what we do routinely in clinic is when somebody has lupus, we try to screen them by following certain blood tests and urine tests at intervals so that we can catch things early. So somebody who didn't ever have kidney involvement could 10 years after their lupus diagnosis suddenly get kidney involvement. But if you're able to see a doctor every couple of months, the hope is that, the earliest sign of it before it really hurts your kidneys is something that we can identify, and then we can aggressively try to calm down that inflammation in your body so it doesn't cause damage. So, I think the take home I would say is that it can affect many, many, many different organs, right? But the sooner that you can get care for anything that doesn't feel right is important. And, I think Wendy's story too about the patients diagnosing themselves because they put together these symptoms that maybe, they weren't able to talk to a doctor about, or a doctor didn't listen to them, or that didn't put that together. I mean, I've heard that story a lot, and I see a number of patients who come to me and say, listen, I'm pretty sure this is what I have, which is, amazing. And I think a lot of the time they're right,
Dr. Feldman, like I say, with these polls behind me, the aim here is to open up the conversation more broadly. Just preparing for this show, Mary and I have heard our Wellness Warrior Network say, hey, there's someone in the chair who has lupus. I didn't know that. So to what extent can the caregivers or care service providers be allies in both the support and helping people not ignore some of those early symptoms like hair loss?
Yeah, I think it's huge. One of the things that one of the programs that I've worked with colleagues in, a lot of patients in the greater Boston and greater Chicago area about is training people who are leaders in their communities, who have big social networks, like people who work in barbershops and hair salons, and people who, work for neighborhood health associations, and training them about what lupus is and these symptoms, right? Like fatigue. So people who just feel tired too much and know something is wrong, and joints that are achy, and hair loss. And when you're out in the sun, you feel kind of sick, these things that maybe aren't just quite enough to say, I need to go tell my doctor, but together, raise suspicion. And so I think that, that individuals who work in hair salons are like exactly who we want to talk to about this, right? Because so frequently people come with hair loss, right? And that's the symptom that, oh, well, my hair is thinning, or I have this weird bald spot and I don't know why. And, those are not the people who are coming to me, that they're going to somebody who they trust, but also maybe are a little bit embarrassed about it and won't tell, their friends or even their primary care doctor about it. So I think that, as I think one of you, I think maybe Mary Neal, you said like boots on the ground. I mean, this is true, boots on the ground. I was so excited at the chance to be able to talk to all of you, because I think that's exactly right. Like the way we get people to get care and to get diagnosed early is by people who are like front lines in the community, right? Like, I don't know, that's what I believe. And so I think that it couldn't be more important to think about this as one of the things, when people start saying things that are like, oh, I'm tired and my hair is falling out, my joints hurt. It's like, go see your doctor, tell them to test you for lupus, or at least do a test that would make you think about lupus. Because I think, as Wendy said, there is no perfect test for lupus, but there are things that will raise suspicion for it.
Well, you've heard the word warrior more than you've heard the word warrior from Wendy. You're going to meet some more warriors. In fact, Sandra Jenkins is a wellness warrior, and you have just given a charge to the front line, a source of just encouragement. Thank you.
I have to chime in since we're in the barber shop. And
absolutely.
That my relationship with my hairstylist is the place where it was a huge educational journey for her. When I went in, not too long after diagnosis, I had to reveal that I had lupus, and she didn't know. And I've been with her now over 20 years.
Wow. And
she cares for me because she learned lupus. I have 2 people that do my hair, and both of them now know about lupus, what it is. It affected my scalp. They have come up with ways I could wear they're like my mom's now, because it's like, no, you can't have that hairstyle. No, you could do that. There's protective styles.
Okay.
And I bring my medicated shampoo, they keep it, so
Nice.
it is a collaboration, and it has been a place where I have talked about the experience with having lupus, and I have shared or even have taken appointments where it would be another person with lupus and they would ask me to come because that person was newly diagnosed, and we had the conversation in those shops. And so it's very, very important in those places to have those relationships, because they're your psychologist, they're your friend. I mean, she's like my sister, and she knows lupus. She even keeps information about lupus by her chair.
All right.
Wow.
Because it's
And
been
we're
that
gonna-
type of journey, because she knows, from my experience about, lupus. And pretty much all of my beauty or experts, they all know my story, and they all have a knowledge and a working thing and a way they care and treat me, because they know I have this condition, from my nail tech to my hair people,
Wow.
going to get massage. Everybody knows. So it's almost like
Wow.
the beauty industry is like it's like a doctor's appointment now,
It's
because
a
they know.
support system.
One you
Yeah.
look forward to,
Absolutely.
but one you look forward to going to.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me do this. I'm gonna get a pulse.
Yes.
But I want to go to Katrina Randolph in Maryland, it's Trey Shay's studio. Hey Katrina, how you doing this evening?
Hello, everyone. How are you?
Good.
This subject is really touchy for me, but I am forever grateful to be on this platform tonight. Just listen to Wendy's story and Miss Sandra's story, because right now I have a 19-year-old daughter who has the same symptoms, that the body aches, the outbreaks when she go out into the sun, the slight depression every now and again. So I've been taking her back and forth to doctors, taking her back and forth to her dermatologist, and we're not getting the medications we need. We're not getting the results that we need. Nothing has changed. So I just made her an appointment to a rheumatologist, because the last dermatologist she went to, because she's 19, I wasn't able to go with her. So the dermatologist told her, okay, you may have a form of skin lupus, but it's nothing to worry about. So I was a little disappointed that the doctor didn't give her a referral to, get any extensive tests or any blood work done. So now we're in the process of taking her to a rheumatologist, but it's hard dealing with a 19-year-old who don't want to hear you say you may have lupus, you don't understand what it is. So I got to go back and forth with her. So to hear these stories tonight is just amazing for me. It's helping me get along with it, because this is a touchy subject for me, and I pray every day it's not the case. But most of the symptoms she has seems like they're leading towards lupus, but we're going to keep praying and remain hopeful until we go to this doctor on next Friday. So this platform is great for me. I can't wait till we get into our project on lupus, so that we can learn more in depth about what it is and what it looked like, so that we can share more information behind our chairs. So thank you, Wendy, for your story. It's amazing. It blessed my life tonight. Along with Miss Sandra, me and her talk about it all the time. So thank you guys so much. This is definitely the best platform ever to have these type of conversations. Thank you.
Katrina, before you just tell them just a thumbnail who you are.
I'm Katrina Randolph out of Landover, Maryland. I own and operate Trey Shades Hair Studio. I'm also part of this amazing hair network where we share health information in our salons behind our chair. And can I tell you,
that's wonderful.
we have all types of health conversations, and lupus has been one of those ones who has been more prominent to talk about. And I'm noticing that a lot of the younger generation of women are finding out they're being diagnosed with lupus. And I'm like, wow.
Yes.
So thank you.
Well, thanks so much, Katrina Randolph. What I want to do now, a couple of things. I know I got my team behind the scene, and we are I want to get a pulse.
That's right.
Now. Dr. T, let's see what we can do with the word cloud. Tee it up, Doc T.
I want you to think about a word that best reflects how you're feeling right now at this moment in the pandemic. And that's right, there's still a pandemic going on. And for our guests here, just type that word in the chat. For those of you out in social media land, use your Q&A box and just type, and then keep typing words for the next 60 seconds. And we have a crew that's going to build a cloud.
Okay.
And when we see the cloud, the larger the word, the more people said that. But that would give us an idea of what's on people's minds. So keep those words coming, or about spelling, just get them in there. And Mayor, what a conversation we have going
What
in
a
this room.
conversation. Powerful.
Unbelievable.
And it's that kind of authentic, real life conversations that make a difference and that resonates with people. And that's why it's important that we do this. I'm so appreciative of this moment. And again, this is not the last time we're going to broach this subject. I promise you that. We're going to continue to try to explain in many ways as we can how this particular disease impact people, because the more people know, the better they are. And then once you know, then you owe.
There
Right?
you go.
And so I owe it to our listening audience, our viewing audience, wherever they are, to continue to try to put this information out for them. I know we got a lot of people still hanging out with us. I know my team is working behind the scene. Can we bring up Dorothy to just, while you all are working, can you just put Dorothy up?
And while she's coming up, while Dorothy's
and,
coming up, I just want to ask, Katrina talked about the challenge with the daughter. Yeah, imagine if there was another support person, not the mom, to help and reinforce. That's the kind of community environment we have in these spaces.
Mhm.
And so now we're out in Pine Bluffs, Arkansas. Hey, Dorothy
Absolutely.
Reynolds.
Hello, how are you all?
Doing
All
great.
good.
How you doing? Good. What's your thoughts about tonight's conversation?
I have thoroughly enjoyed it. I've heard so much about lupus, information regarding lupus, because as I said earlier, when we talked about it, my sister-in-law passed from lupus. She had multiple myeloma cancer, and we already knew she had lupus, but the cancer was in remission, but the lupus took over, and that's what she passed from, was the symptoms from lupus. It had gone internal.
Mm.
And as we started talking about it, I remembered a neighbor that we had when back in 1970, she went to the hospital with rheumatoid arthritis, and they treated her for that for about a month in the hospital. And they called in a specialist, and that's when they determined she had lupus, and she expired from it also. But when I was listening to Mrs. Rogers, Wendy talk, that's what reminded me of my former neighbor. But I've been really excited about it. I guess Dr. T got tired of me because information kept coming to me every day after we discussed it when he brought it to me. And it seems like all day long I was getting information and I was sending it to Dr. T as I got it, as it came on my computer.
So you're looking at a silver lining of the pandemic, because Dorothy Reynolds wasn't in all this technology before that, not like now. So we're texting all the time. So we're stimulating information-seeking behavior. And our shops are now trusted information centers. This is a silver lining of the pandemic, Dr. Feldman. We touched over 1,000 shops across the country. And right now, you know, as some of the retrenchment is happening, you know, the very front line is being abandoned. Let's just say we need to speak up and make noise. Do not abandon the front line, because you've just validated why, even beyond COVID, it's so important to keep these trusted places in place, because folks had these conditions before the pandemic hit. And as the mayor says, now that we know, we're not leaving. Maybe this would be a whole new field of public health, because it means maintaining the engagement and providing a training platform for our barbers and stylists to address these broader range of issues, including being certified as lifestyle coaches.
Okay. Hey, Dr. T, let's go to Cincinnati. Since it said T, let's go to Cincinnati And pull up Michelle Lamb.
And as they're coming up, the fact, Wendy, that your stylist had your medicated shampoo and told you what or not style to have or not have. As we continue this conversation, help the other stylists and barbers out there know what they can do to in a sense, do best care for those with lupus. Hey, Michelle Lamb.
Hello there,
Out
everyone.
of the
How are you?
Buckeye State.
Yeah,
Yes.
all the way from
How's everyone?
Cincinnati.
All
What's
good.
going
Just
on?
tell them who you
How
are.
doing?
Just a thumbnail.
I'm Michelle Lamb. I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I own the Hairport Barber and Beauty Studio. And this conversation, I think I asked a question about the skin. I had been doing my own research about the butterfly rash. Now, is that just in the face butterfly, or could it be butterfly over the body?
That's a good one.
Good
Dr. Feldman,
question.
you want to take that one?
Sure. So the butterfly rash itself is the sort of classically is right on the face. And the reason it's called a butterfly is because it's in this distribution right under the eyes and over the nose and on the cheeks. And one of the things that is important about it is it actually what we call spares the nasolabial folds. So these folds right here, they tend to not get affected by the rash because the nose serves as a little umbrella. And so these are really just areas that are hit by the sun really hard. So the nose and right here, and it forms that shape of a butterfly. But the rashes, so that's one kind of rash we can see from lupus, but there are tons of other kinds of rashes we can see from lupus too. So, there are rashes that look scalier, there are rashes that look more like spots, and classically they're on the areas that are exposed to the sun. So it's like this part of the face, it can be the upper chest, the arms, the forehead. But they're all, the thing about lupus is that it can do all sorts of things. So while those are the most common, we can also see different kinds of rashes that appear at other parts of the body as well that may not be exposed to the sun. But the butterfly rash, when somebody says that, that's really this rash that's right on the cheeks. And it usually comes on when people spend some time in the sun. And that's part of why we tell our patients to wear sunscreen all the time, even on days that aren't sunny, no matter how light or dark their skin is, to wear sunscreen, and also to wear hats that have wide brims to protect them and their skin from the sun.
Okay. I wanted to say one more thing. Now, I've had this rash for about a month, on my chest. It started off as 2 little bumps. Then a couple days later, it just went crazy. All across my chest. And then at the same time, this pain in my lower back. Since we've been talking about this, I went to the doctor. They put me on steroids. It went away. But now it's back. So I have a physical this month. So this is enlightening because I've been reading about this. I knew nothing about lupus until Dr. Thomas said, this is what we're doing. This is what we're going to be studying the next 9 months. And I'm thinking like, wow, I'm an asthmatic.
Okay.
So I already have autoimmune. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
So, this is just so weird to me. I mean, not weird, but, I'm thinking like, well, wait a minute. So, Dr. Feldman, would you have any suggestions when I do go to my doctor? What should I say to her, or what?
That's
It's a great question. It's a great question. And, and I think that the putting the pieces of the puzzle together is definitely important. I will say, there are a lot of things that can cause different kinds of rashes and a lot of different things that can cause back pain too. So I think there's, a very strong possibility that that's not what that is, right? But I think it's a very reasonable question to ask your doctor and to say, I heard that joint pain and rashes that get better with steroids and then come back when you stop steroids can be
Mhm.
seen in lupus. Is that something that you think you may want to do some blood tests for? And I think it's a very, very reasonable question to ask.
Okay. Thank
And
you.
I just want you to know out there in social media land, somebody on Facebook sent in a question and said, could we have a cheat sheet of lupus symptoms to pass out?
Mhm.
What a great idea through the barbershops and the salon network. Our network is called HAIR, Health Advocates in Reach and Research.
Yeah.
And that advocacy part, Dr. Feldman, is very important because everything I've heard is you better have an advocate on your side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we can empower people when the time comes.
Yeah,
And you know,
Wendy,
the word
we
cloud's
can-
ready.
Wendy,
Okay,
you and I can talk too,
go
because I know the Lupus Foundation definitely has documents like that. You know, some of the projects that we've worked on, there are documents
Oh.
like that. I'm sure we can give you.
I'm sure the
you know-
material's out there, but we're going to also create some.
Oh, awesome. Fabulous.
With
But we
your
can
help.
give you starting points to help
Absolutely.
inspire what you're working on.
Yeah,
for
we have a
sure.
bookmark that is really helpful. It's front and back, and there's, I believe, 12 questions people can ask themselves. And if they're saying yes, then that's a sign that they
Wow.
need to see a rheumatologist. And on the opposite side is a listing of the symptoms.
Now we have a team behind the scenes,
Yeah.
and they'll push that information out on our social
Mhm.
media, and we'll make that
Yeah.
available and in the newsletter. Hey, Mary, the cloud's ready.
Yeah, but there's one more question. I'm gonna get to the clouds. Well,
Okay.
let me get to the cloud. What?
Yeah.
No. Just let me
Okay.
ask the question, and Dr. Feldman, maybe you can help this. And that is, can lupus, if lupus can be triggered by pregnancy, is that
Mhm.
possible?
Yes. And it also, you know, it was good to see Dr. Ritter on the panel as well. You know, lupus is definitely something we have seen present during pregnancy. We've seen it present among people who are trying to get pregnant. And it's also something that sometimes we can see present right after a person delivers a baby. So, you know, there's some
Wow.
autoimmune conditions like lupus that get completely better during pregnancy. There's some that sometimes get better, sometimes get worse, sometimes present for the first time during pregnancy. And lupus is one of those. And it can have some implications for pregnancy too. I will say, that being said, people with lupus can have pregnancies and healthy babies, and
Yeah.
all of that is possible and very possible. And so I don't want the take home from this comment to be that it isn't, but it's definitely something we can see during pregnancy, but it's something that requires a team of doctors who have experience taking care of people who have lupus during pregnancy, to be involved. So it involves, you know, the OBGYN, it involves the rheumatologist, it often involves a higher risk pregnancy expert. And there are medications that we use to treat lupus that are actually very safe to use during pregnancy, which is great. So it helps us be able to care for people when they're pregnant if they have lupus.
Okay. All right,
Good
Dr. T,
information.
thank you so much, Dr. Feldman.
Yes, thank you.
What we want to do is now let's get a pulse. Let's see where we are. Andre, I'm teeing you up.
All right, here we go.
Inspired, informed, blessed, grateful, hopeful,
All right,
you
look
know,
at that. Come
honored,
on now.
educated, you know, resilient, hopeful, appreciative, an advocate, exciting, curious, knowledgeable, blessed, fortunate, and of course, we are resilient. And I think all of those really encapsulate what we heard here tonight when it comes to lupus and understanding the multiplicity of issues that surround lupus. I think that if you've been with us through the show, you have been edified. You know more about lupus than you did before you
That's
tuned
right.
in. And I know that I do. And I have gained so much from this experience. Dr. T, you know, we about 6 minutes away.
I can't believe how fast it's going.
That's how quickly it goes. But we got to say a couple
We
of
touched
things.
some lives
We got-
out there, though.
Absolutely, we got to go down to the ATL and speak to our
Atlanta,
brother.
and we get one of the
owns
brothers up here.
Yeah, he owns a barbershop in the Atlanta airport. So,
That's right.
so let's go down to the ATL and talk to Andre Russell. Hey, Andre, how you doing, man?
Yeah, how are you guys doing? Thank you very much for putting me up. But for Connie and Wendy, or Candace and Wendy, I'm sorry, you guys have given us a whole lot of information. We are not doctors, we are not interns. However, you've given us enough information that we can do something positive within our shops. And then you have also told us that we have some place to go when we need more information. Candace said we have flyers. Wendy said we also have flyers. Dr. T said he will print them up tremendously. So now we have commitment. Mayor O'Neill said he will pump it whenever he has another show. And my name is Andre Russell. I am in the busiest airport in the world, and I will stand outside my door and talk to. We only get about 37,000 people a day, but I will go ahead and stand outside the door of my shop and say, we have information for Lupus. Would you like to find out?
There you go. Come on now.
Wow.
Hey,
Let's step this warrior up.
Right. I
That's how the
appreciate
wellness
you.
warriors work.
I'm just
Thank you
saying.
thank you, Andre. We appreciate you, man. Love you. Love you. Love down to the ATL. All right. Well, thanks. We got 4 minutes to wrap this thing up. This is an amazing show. I can't overemphasize how important this show is, how informative it has been. So I want to do a round robin, in the last words from our panelists. I'm gonna start with you, Sandra Jenkins. You were elevated to a panelist. You are one of us, but sometimes we put people in spaces through divine providence, and no such thing as happenstance, right?
Oh my God.
All right. Yeah, so your last words.
My last words is taking a lead on this issue, taking a lead in my industry, and taking that lead in my community, to motivate all of those around me. That is what I'm feeling about right now. It's very heartfelt. And so I will be that person to be reliable and be dependable to those all around me.
Thank you so much. We love you so much, and you know that. Thank you. All right, our new family member, Dr. Candace Philman. You know your family now, right? So
I love that.
I can feel it. She
are.
loves being here.
I love being here.
You
Right.
tell your colleagues what it means to come to the cutting edge.
Totally, absolutely. Yeah, I think, if I have one last word or couple words, I would say I really think that awareness is so important for this disease. We see such tremendous disparities in things that can be avoided. And I think that getting the word out about this condition and about the importance of advocating for yourself and getting that care that you need and being able to access that care is just so important. And I really think that that's how we're going to get rid of the disparities we see and prevent some of the things that are really avoidable that relate to this disease. So I'm so grateful to all of you for what you do and for your willingness to be here and listen. And I will say too that, I'm happy to stay a resource to all of you. If you encounter people with questions, you know where to find me. So I'm happy to help too.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Well, the last minute goes to you, Wendy Rogers. You got it. I'm going to let you be the last thing that we hear. I normally end the show. I'm going to let you end it. Go ahead.
All I have to say is never underestimate the power of a conversation. This simple conversation has stimulated so much knowledge and so much inspiration. And we know from this point, there's going to be action. So conversations are powerful. And thank you for this one.
Well, Wendy Rogers, thank you so much. You are family as well.
Indeed, indeed.
And I'm here to help if you need me.
Oh, we got a seat at the table for the cutting edge for you.
Absolutely. Dr. Candace
Big.
Roman, again, it has been a delight, a pleasure, an honor to have you join us on the cutting edge. Sandra Jenkins and all of the wellness warriors, thank you all so much for always being there, present, and really sharing your truth to the world, believing that we all are possessors of some truth. And as we bring our truths together, then and only then do we get closer to the truth. Dr. T, I thank you and I love you, my brother, for your leadership and for your spirit of giving that permeates this whole space. And now, as Wendy said, I'm going to leave you with these two words. Remember that I love you with a perfect love. But more importantly, remember this. You got the power. Until the next time on the cutting edge, have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
All right. You got the power.